All right, guys, thank you for joining us. It's Denise Levy, Miss Matchmaker, with my co-host Jeremiah Brewer and our special guest Rachel Russo. And tonight we are going to be talking about the pains and realities of online dating. So we are accepting guests on tonight's show. If you are interested in going live on video with us, go ahead and jump in an open seat. Or you can participate in the comments on the right-hand side as well. So welcome, Rachel, back again. We had so much fun last time. We had to do it again.
Happy to be back in a short time, too. It was a lot of fun. So hopefully tonight will be even better.
Yay! Jeremiah, I know this was a topic that you kind of came up with because you are someone who has been experiencing the online dating scene yourself for a while now. So I'm going to let you go ahead and start. You came up with some great questions and topics for us to discuss. So go ahead and jump right in.
Yeah, for anyone who remembers the last time Rachel was on, we kind of ended the conversation talking about a little bit of the conundrum of online dating. And I guess afterwards we kind of decided that it would make a great topic to discuss fully. So I came up with just some questions and some things to discuss. I'm sure that a lot of people have questions and interests about if they're anything like me and become somewhat apprehensive of the online dating thing. Maybe this will kind of help clear the smoke screen a little bit and put a different perspective, maybe. I don't know. The name is, of course, The Pains and Realities of Online Dating, because that's how I feel like it is. And I'll just start off by asking Rachel, are people really getting into relationships from mobile dating apps and sites?
People are, Jeremiah, or I don't even think we would be doing this live episode here right now to discuss it. So it is happening. I can't say that I'm seeing it happening for most people most of the time. So it's not something that I would necessarily say is going to work for everyone, but it can work. And hopefully for those who are listening, who are interested, we can give them some tools to actually make it work so that they can be in the majority. And hopefully more and more people will figure out how to actually make all this online craziness work for them.
And I agree, Rachel, because one of the things that I do with my clients, even though I am a matchmaker and it's my job to match them, I always tell people to leave every door open, to try every single route possible. And, you know, from what I hear, it can be very frustrating when people go through what I call dating fatigue. Mm-hmm. But I always encourage them to continue with that process, use every available option, and stay with the online dating. Don't just toss your hands up. But I think with what we're going to discuss tonight, we're actually giving a lot more advice to people on not how to do it, but how to do it right.
Yes, totally. And I agree with what you're saying completely. As a matchmaker as well, I always encourage my clients to take a 2 or 3 tiered approach. I know that they want to find love through us. That's like why they hired us. They hate online dating. I get it. Yes. But the truth is life is really funny. And sometimes you put the energy into a certain area and it doesn't quite work out how you think. So you may pay thousands of dollars for a matchmaker and end up meeting someone on Tinder if you're following our approach. But I don't think it really matters how you meet them. The point is maybe going to you as the matchmaker or going to we opened up their world and gave them a new possibility. Maybe they would have never done Tinder without our encouragement. So it all kind of happens for a reason, I think. And it shouldn't matter where you meet the person as long as you meet them.
Mm-hmm. And I think with advice from people like us within that industry, it does make the online dating a little bit easier. You know, one of the things that I've done for people is help them with their online dating profiles, with their strategies, with their branding. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that as well tonight.
That's great. I do that as well. So hopefully I can offer some tips.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I believe in opening as many doors as you possibly can at one time to allow, you know, as many situations to happen, you know, whether it be online dating, hiring a matchmaker, getting yourself out there, going to events, you know, all that stuff.
So you're saying basically throw everything on the wall and something will stick.
See what sticks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, so going from there, I guess we could just really talk about the tools that we're using. We talk about the apps and the different sites, ones that you may recommend more for women or men, and why. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a good place to start. I think that different apps work better for men and women. So you have to know which is, if you're a single woman who's looking, will you have actually better chances on an app like, say, Bumble, where the women have to be proactive and contact the men? Or will you have better luck on Tinder, where the men are reaching out to you? So I think it matters. You have to consider the type of relationship that you're looking for. In a sense, if you're someone that really wants the man to pursue, it may feel uncomfortable even to be on Bumble. Although I do recommend Bumble for women because, at least in the New York area, a lot of guys, really good guys that you would never even think would be on these apps, super successful professional guys, good looking, everything relationship oriented, they're on these apps. They're actually saying that Bumble is better than Tinder because there's classier women. So I would encourage women for the most part to be on it, but if they are a woman who's super traditional, they might not feel comfortable with it, with approaching the guy first. So they may want to try Tinder too and see what works better for them. There is an element of luck, but you have to keep on going with whatever app it is.
So let me ask Rachel, because I'm really not familiar with it. Is it the women that can only make initial contact with that?
Yeah. So the way that Bumble, the way that this is, I think, the only one that's like this, the way Bumble works for anyone who doesn't know, it's like Tinder in the sense that you both have to swipe on each other. And then if you do, you actually have about 24 hours for the woman to make contact. And if she doesn't, the match disappears. Unless the guy sends something called a compliment, which extends another 24 hours. He's allowed to give one a day, and then she has like 48 hours to contact the guy. So
interesting.
Like from a female perspective, again, like if you're on the other hand a female who's used to getting a lot of messages on these apps, this may appeal to you more because you won't have to deal with unwanted contact from just any random guy. So that could be good for women. And the guys actually, if they're kind of like sick of doing all the work and being traditional and approaching and getting rejected, maybe they like Bumble. So there's pros and cons, I think, for either gender.
I think that sounds wonderful, though, because a lot of what I hear from people as far as the online dating is concerned is because there are so many men on these apps, they're being rejected so many times by the women. And where if the woman has to make that initial contact, I think that lowers the fear of rejection.
It does. And it switches things up a little bit. And it may make the men feel kind of special, actually. They're not used to being hit on by the women. And now the women have to think of something cute to say. I mean, some could just say hi. I think if they have really good pictures, that would work. But, it's the tables have turned. So it's interesting.
That's great. That's great. And I think with the dating fatigue, too, women are used to being bombarded in their inbox and have all of these messages, and to have to go through and read every single one and determine who they're going to pick to talk back to. It's just brilliant. They get to make that choice ahead of time.
Yes. And I think the nice thing about some of these dating apps is that it is a quicker process because you have less information than, say, on a site like Match.com or eHarmony. In particular, eHarmony, a lot of people I know complain, even though this is a site for truly relationship-oriented people, I find that it takes so much time to go back and forth with these icebreakers and all the guided communication. So a lot of people tire of that. And I find that some of the clients are encountering people that are not only on eHarmony and, say, Match.com, but are also doing all kinds of free apps, whether it is the Bumble, the Tinder, the Happen, the Hinge, the League, OkCupid. I mean, it's endless. And the same people are on these different sites and apps. So, if you are someone that doesn't have the time to weed through all the random emails or go through the guided communication, maybe consider stopping your membership there and giving these apps more of a try and kind of weeding through people a little quicker. That might be more efficient for you, whether you're male or female.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are some of the ones that you recommend for men? I mean, obviously that's a great one for women and has its pros for men as well. But what would you say the top one you would recommend to the gentleman would be?
Again, this might vary based on different regions because some are more popular in different parts of the country or internationally. I happen to like Hinge because Hinge incorporates more of your Facebook friends. I know the other apps do that as well, but I feel like on Hinge, a lot of people that have Facebook connections are coming up on Hinge. So I like that because I like to play detective. And I definitely ask the mutual friend, what about this guy? So if people are interested in that, it's kind of a softer introduction. It doesn't feel as random as some of the other ones.
Right. And to be able to get feedback on that person before there's a connection made makes you feel, I think, a little bit more secure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting.
And I guess, I always would recommend Match.com to anyone. Although I do have to say it's not perfect and there's scammers on there and there's fake profiles and there's hidden profiles. And I think we all are noticing that there's been lawsuits, but still I feel like everybody knows someone who met their husband or wife on Match. So I think it's still worth a try in general for both men and women.
Well, it's funny you bring this up. What was the statistic? They spent millions of dollars to research and find out that 1 out of every 5 relationships starts on Match.
Wow, yeah. Yep.
But let's look at that from a different point of view. That means 4 of them don't.
That's right. That's right. And how are these other relationships happening? That's what I would really like to know. Is it from other sites or is it from meeting at a bar or MatchMakers? Who knows?
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, but I found it really amusing that they spent all that money to do the research to come up with that one statistic.
I know.
And then all of a sudden it's like, well, turn that around. That means that 4 of them are not. What does that say?
I guess it depends how you see the glass.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was actually talking about Match and eHarmony. One of my friends, I was actually just talking to them yesterday, and they had the mindset that if they spent the money on the more expensive apps and services, that they were going to get a better quality of person because they believed that that person was going to be more serious about meeting their match versus somebody else. What do you think about that?
That's a common belief, and there might be some truth to it. A little more effort is required by paying a monthly fee, but I don't think that we're talking about an investment that's so significant that you're necessarily going to get someone that's that much more serious. Right. I hear that about like Plenty of Fish. Plenty of Fish has a really bad reputation in certain circles of being a site that's all about hookups and, it's low class and this and that. If you want a good site, you need someone that pays. But I hate to sound negative, but the reality is that I know people even that hire matchmakers for thousands of dollars, and sometimes they're still not even serious. It's up to the matchmakers to weed out who is and isn't, just like it's kind of up to the user of whatever online dating site or app. I wouldn't necessarily judge. It's not always like what you get is what you pay for, because again, some of the people that are paying for matchmakers could even be on these apps. So, the money question is up in the air.
Yeah. And I'll back you up on that, Rachel, because I've had so many people come through my front office and, basically they come in, they're like, yes, I'm serious. And then after about 30 minutes of conversation, you realize that they're not necessarily as serious as they're coming off to be.
Right.
And I'm lucky because I can pick and choose who I do want to work with. Yes. And there has to be that level of priority for me to accept them into matchmaking. So, just because someone's willing to drop thousands of dollars does not make them serious.
It's so true. Yeah, I really find that. And I think it's up to, again, like you're saying, each and every matchmaker. I think it's great that, for you and unfortunately for me as well, we have the luxury of doing that because we're established. Yes. When you're just starting out, it might be like you take whoever comes to you. But, I feel the same. I want to work with people that are truly relationship oriented. But I know just from doing those initial screenings, just because people are paying, they have the money, so they're spending it. A lot of times, like if they're divorced, they want to get back out there. It doesn't necessarily mean they want to get married right away. So, whatever the medium, don't get fooled by money, and don't even get fooled by what they say initially. It really takes time, and actions sort of speak louder than words to find out the ones that are truly relationship oriented.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I agree. You have to watch someone's behaviors because the words are meaningless half the time.
Yep. Totally.
Yeah. I personally fell into that trap and, forked out the money for a match profile. And I actually had a pretty bad experience with them where when I finally did get my membership, they ended up tweaking my profile and using it as spam, basically.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they changed the photos, they changed the location, and I was irate. I had to call them up and tell them, and they tried to make up some story like my password was compromised. I was like, no.
Wow, that's terrible. Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so I was pretty irate.
I know some good lawyers.
But I haven't used them since then. I was like, nah, I'm over that. So,
wow.
Yeah, that's why, again, I'm a little apprehensive about the whole online dating thing. So
yeah,
but
understandable.
Yeah,
a lot of people feel the way that you feel. I think that there's still a stigma. It's definitely lessening, but there's definitely people that you'll meet on these apps that say things like, I'm willing to lie about how we met. So you're not the only one.
Yeah.
All right, Rachel, we got one of your buddies joining in.
Hi. Hi. How are you?
Good. This is a good conversation.
Thanks for calling
joining us. Yes.
This is. I did a blab earlier today, and we brought up online dating. So I figured, let's talk about online dating some more.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, does everyone know who Sandy is? She has to introduce herself.
Yes, Sandy, please introduce yourself to our viewers and let everyone know a little bit about who you are and kind of give us a little background, if you don't mind.
Sure. I am the founder of Last First Date. I am a dating coach for women over 40. I specialize in online dating. I help women value themselves first, become women of value. And what else do I do? I'm a radio host of Last First Date Radio, which airs every Tuesday. And Rachel's been on my show as an expert. Yes. I interview experts in dating and relationships after 40. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming in and saying hello.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, maybe some future collaborations between you guys would be good.
Because ever the matchmaker, Rachel.
Yeah, Sandy has some great guests and a lot of insight too. So
interesting. Yes. Yeah. Well, yes, Sandy, I've actually been in the industry for about 20 years now, so I've seen dating from no online dating to complete online dating to being bombarded with online dating.
Yes. Well, I am happy to report that I just got my mother into online dating.
Yeah.
She is 83, and her second husband passed away about 2 years ago, and she's feeling the urge to date again, or at least have some companionship. So I wrote her profile. It was challenging, I'll tell you, writing your mother's profile. And I got her up. What?
Can't even imagine. That's great.
Yeah, and she was open to it. So what I did for her was I got on Zoom and did a live video screen share with her. And I said, and I sent her the copy of it. And I showed her how to search and how to write emails. I sent her my online dating guide. I said, read this, but don't call me every 5 seconds. So we wrote to a few guys, and she goes, they're not writing back. They're all duds. And I said, okay, let's not assume anything. So that's part of the problem, is that we make assumptions so quickly about why people don't write back and we start denigrating their character, and we really don't know anything about them. And so it's important to not make assumptions. They could be busy. They could have, 100 emails in their inbox. They could not be paid members. She's on a paid site. So you never know. And
you know,
yeah,
it's so interesting as Sandy's talking about this. I was just thinking, my mind was spinning about like the differences between different age groups, how they would handle this, because there's rejection. Certainly, like if it's the millennial generation, they expect a response instantly.
Oh, yeah.
But like here, even your mother in her 80s is like, they're duds. They're not ready to back. So, you know, what is the time frame that's acceptable for someone to respond? Because here we all are on our phones, and sometimes we're getting notifications there. We're constantly checking email. Maybe, you know, the men that are senior citizen men are not necessarily checking, but some of them might be. They're retired. They have time on their hands. So it's like, what is the expectation for when people should respond and how quickly things should proceed? Is it different for different age groups online? I think it would be a really interesting study. Maybe it's done already. I don't know.
Yeah, it is interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, because I when I was writing her profile, I wasn't even sure if I should handle things a little differently for her age group. Because what you want to highlight about your life is certainly going to be different than somebody who's marrying for the first time in their 20s or 30s. Certainly she's retired. She's looking to have a companion to do fun things with. And, you know, and you want to highlight the good stuff that you've done.
So true.
Yeah. But I think in terms of answering emails, I think that we've just kind of lost etiquette altogether in online dating. God, it's
rough.
It's so rough, and people get really annoyed if you don't answer in 2 seconds, and they write 10 other texts, and it's like, oh, come on, like I have a life. So yeah, I think that's
funny, Cindy, because it's not something that we're taught. There's nobody that teaches us about dating and etiquette. You know, to me, it should be as something we're taught in high school. You know,
it really should.
Oh my God. I would love to have this be a course in high school, like how to be in relationships, social skills, and
it's unbelievable that it isn't, with such a high divorce rate and relationships having so much importance in our lives, that we're not taught anything about this.
Yeah, and then they try to do the repair work. It's much harder to repair than it is to build good skills.
It is.
Well, communication in general is becoming more and more challenging and awkward with more and more technology. I mean, people communicate more now through Facebook and through text message, and they don't know how to communicate and actually respond and interact with somebody one-on-one anymore. And you can tell even when you do send messages online. I mean, for me, in my case, like, to me, a conversation goes, hey, how are you doing? You ask a question. You get an answer back, then they ask a question. And here more so, it's like an interrogation. You're asking questions, and all you get is these little one-word answers back. And you feel like you're doing all the work and all the effort. And it's like, I can't even communicate with this person online. How am I going to communicate with them if I ever meet them? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. So you got to get offline as soon as possible. That's number one. I just wrote an article for Good Men Project about picking up on red flags on the first phone call. And I think, you know, sometimes people on text or email sound great and you feel like you have a great connection. So the opposite of what you're saying, Jeremy, is it's Jeremiah or Jeremy? Jeremiah. And so I got on the phone with a guy recently who I had a really nice connection with. And within minutes, I knew he was the wrong person for me. He was very clingy. He was already future projecting. You're my girlfriend. So what do you want? What do you think? Are you all in? I'm like, hello, I just met you 3 seconds ago.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So like, I know I don't want a man like that. And I found that out on a phone call, and I knew I didn't want to have a first date. Now, a lot of times things don't show up on a phone call and even on a first date. But the whole purpose of online dating is to get offline. It's to just use it as a tool to connect, because I think if we didn't have online dating, right, we wouldn't meet people. I mean, it's once you're past college age and, you know, party stage of life, it's very hard to meet people in real life.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what happens is the older we get, the smaller our social circles become.
Right.
And so as our social circles are decreasing, as well as our ability to communicate and handle rejection, it just makes it all that more confusing for people. And going back to what you said, Sandy, I agree with you. To me, whether you're online dating, working with a matchmaker such as myself or as Rachel, or, however it is you're using to meet people, whatever medium, my best advice is to get offline quickly. Make that initial contact, make that first date, schedule it, and actually meet the person. Because the communication is being so lost and misinterpreted, and you're probably going to be dismissing people for the wrong reasons if you continue to message back and forth. And so I think there's just so much that can be misinterpreted. The faster you get offline and actually to the date, the more you're going to get to know the real person.
Right.
I couldn't agree with that more. And people have no idea about the things that are actually being misinterpreted. A lot of women are getting frustrated, not just by the content, but even like the length of responses. Women are more verbal. Our brains process more words. I always say this on a daily basis. So we write a paragraph, a book, a novel, and a guy writes back 2 sentences, and she's assuming he's not interested. I'm not a priority. He's texting other girls. I mean, one thing that really annoys me is if I write a paragraph and the guy writes back with an emoticon or like a K or a yup. I mean, that's it. Goodbye. You're going to be ignored for 2 days. But it's silly when you don't know someone because you have no idea what's going on the other side of the screen. So I think it's just so damaging. And we do have to be able to teach people to look for red flags because they are there even in the text communication. But if everything seems normal in the first few exchanges, the profile's okay, there's nothing shady, no red flags, I think you just have to have a phone conversation, make sure you break the ice, and then just schedule a date.
Yeah, get in there.
Yeah.
I
and even
agree.
with my matchmaking clients, Rachel, I advise them not to spend too much time on the phone, to actually call, introduce yourself, make plans for the date, and then get off the phone, save it for the date.
Yeah. I actually don't let my matchmaking clients talk on the phone anymore.
And there's some that I don't
either because they're ruining it and they're judging each other. So if they fit all the criteria, they have to just meet.
But see, in matchmaking, you have vetted both parties.
Yes, exactly.
So that's very different from a total stranger online. And I think I agree with you with matchmaking. You don't want to have preconceived notions. And there was actually an article about Googling people in the New York Times. I don't know if you saw it.
Oh, I'd love to. I have to look at it.
It's good. It's actually on my Facebook page.
Let's check it out.
I put it in my group. You're in your last first date group, right? So I put it in there today. I think that what happens, this woman actually was a very funny article. You saw it, Denise?
I did not. No, I'm listening.
You did not. So it was a humor column in the New York Times. And she starts out by saying, like, years ago, you didn't have Google. And so you really just used your gut to decide if a person was right for you or not.
Yes.
She was on a date with a guy and they were out in New York City. And a woman leans over the table and whispers in his ear something really nasty. And then she says and I think the woman ends up saying to her, "This guy hits women, so good luck." And she runs away. And so she ran after her and she said, "I just want to thank you for telling me." Because, that's the Google of the 1970s or 80s.
That's right.
Right? So somebody had to say to you, this is a wife beater. This is an emotional abuser. And today, I'm torn about Googling. I'd love to hear what you all have to say. I feel like unless you have a bad gut feeling, like a really bad gut feeling, just get out there and date. Like I have been Googled and people come to the first date having watched my TED Talk, and read my blogs. They feel like they know me and I want them to know the real me. And I actually had a guy once say to me, "I started reading all about you. I found you," and I don't give out my last name, but they find me anyway. And he said, I just stopped reading because I wanted to get to know who you were. And I said, "Thank you. I appreciate that."
That's nice. Yeah.
That's really nice. Yeah.
So, have Googled men and found out that they were criminals. I have, every once in a while, just get a really bad feeling and I feel like something didn't line up and I got to Google, or I've Google imaged people who, the first romance scammer I ever had, and first and last, he seemed too good to be true. And I didn't know anything about this at the time. And I kept Googling his name and couldn't find anything. And then finally my friend said, "Oh, there's Google image search." This was so many years ago before I knew about that. I stick his image in there and boom, romance scammer, big articles came up, and it was like, yeah. But
well,
I wrote about
I'm
it.
going to be honest. I'm going to be honest, Sandy. I have very mixed feelings about it. And the reason why I do is because there's so much information out there that is not true.
Right.
And
That's true.
I've seen this happen on a number of occasions where, you know, someone has a profession where one party is not going to like that person. And so they're going to get downed on the internet. And so all of a sudden they've got, you know, pages and pages of this thing, whatever it may be, that is not true about them. And unfortunately, there's nothing they can do to remove stuff like that.
Right.
So I personally have mixed feelings about it because I've seen firsthand what it has done to some people's reputation that was false, you know, accusations that were completely incorrect. You know, Rachel had mentioned earlier one of the dating apps where they can have their friends from Facebook recommend them or whatnot. I think something like that, absolutely. But this day and age, between what I've seen personally in my industry and I've actually seen it happen to people that I know, I really can't say that Googling someone is the best way to do it because you don't know the validity of it. You don't know how much truth is in it.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I've actually checked things out with the person. If I Google them and find something, I'll ask them, is this true? So the criminal that I found, I mean, he had gone to federal prison.
Oh, man.
There were so many articles. So it was like, okay, I don't really want to know the truth from you because you were convicted and sent to jail. Okay, so he said, I was wrongly accused and blah, blah, blah. And I can explain it to you. And I said, yeah, have a good life. I'm really not interested in hearing more lies out of you because I knew. But I agree, and I have actually found out the opposite.
Just to give my 2 cents, I think it's definitely fair to do a Google search to make sure that someone is not a criminal and there's no mugshots up there. But I definitely have seen what you're saying, Denise. You know, things aren't always what they seem to be, and it could cost, especially if it's a business owner, it can cost a whole ton of money and reputation management firms to get those bad reviews and stories and things down. A lot of them are not even true. They're from maybe 1 or 2 disgruntled clients that write things, or employees. Exactly. But also, so, you know, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. I also relate to what Sandy is saying because I am single now and I've been on dates myself. And I'm like, oh no, please don't read my book. I'm proud of everything I do. And this is who I am. And you have to accept that if you're going to date me. It comes with being sort of a public figure. But at the same time, you do not need to know all that stuff before date number 1, because then I go on the date, I'm interrogated, and I come in there like defensive because I have to explain things. So whether, you know, if you have a profession like we do where you're in the public eye, I think it would be nice if your future dates would maybe just look a little, but like stop, like your guy did, and just form their own impressions and get to know you for you, because you're not always the same person that, I mean, yes, there is integrity between the public image that we put out, but there's things beneath that may not be true right away on the surface.
Exactly.
So you got to dig.
You know, and to address that from a matchmaker's point of view, when I do my matching, I don't even give out last names. And the reason for that is because I don't want them Facebook friending them. I don't want them doing those Google search. I've run that criminal background check. I've done the vetting. I've done the screening. And I want them to find out who that person really is, not just look at a photo, pass judgment, and say, oh, never mind, next.
Right.
Exactly.
You know, so I think, you know, from where I sit as a matchmaker, I don't want to see my clients do that. But when we're talking about online dating, that is a totally different story.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the conclusion of that article in the New York Times, I think, was basically that we've taken all the mystery out, and that, you know, there's nothing left to talk about on dates if you Google the hell out of somebody.
Well, then you're boring if there's nothing left to talk about. I still have things to talk about. We're growing and evolving every day, right?
But if you come in thinking you know everything there is to know about a person and you don't get curious, that's not good.
Yeah.
So, yeah. anyway, I think
someone
we have
is
to be careful.
writing something about Yelp. I don't know if you guys see that, but
Lots of Yelp
I'm looking right
reviews.
here.
Most are great.
yeah,
Yeah. I'm in
it's true.
transition if I
Yeah.
looked up on. Yeah. So that's important, that people don't just base their opinion on any one review or in any one thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that we have to bring a lot more curiosity to dating, and a dating app might be my undoing. Oh, tell us why. Yeah, so I think that we have to be cautious, but we shouldn't be overly cautious to the point of not trusting anybody. I think that's sometimes the other extreme that people go into.
I agree. And I think this leads into a really good segue that Jeremiah wanted to talk about, which is the issue of catfishing. It's really a great segue into it, because one of the concerns is how do we tell? What are some of the clues? What are some of the things that people can look for to recognize those red flags and understand, okay, maybe I'm getting myself into a dangerous situation?
Well, I have a really big story and confession here that I will condense for everyone. I had a catfish and I did not meet him. I caught him. This was not even several months ago when it first started, but this particular person contacted me. I actually met him through the matchmaking industry. He pretended that he was going to be a client. And he gave me a name that seemed like a fake name. And I did my homework and my Googling, and I couldn't find anything under that name, like anywhere in the whole Northeast. I only found a few people with this name, like in Virginia or some other state. And this was a period of several months. He sort of went, he was interested. We had a phone conversation. Then he went MIA. And then a couple months later, he resurfaced. He resurfaced from a different phone number. Here's a clue. You have to look at the phone numbers, and you can do a reverse search on Google. So that was the second time. Then he went MIA again. And then the third time he had a different phone number again, all saying that it was the same guy. So I'm saying this guy is either married or he's some type of criminal. He's hiding something. So definitely be aware if people are calling you or texting you from different numbers and you can't find the name associated with that number when you do a reverse search. Right. Then some other clues were that he couldn't talk on the phone at certain times, and the pictures he sent were weird, and just things were not really adding up. And someone wrote here about having the gut feeling. Yeah, I had a bad gut feeling about this guy. And I ended up contacting, I have a really good friend who is a retired police officer, detective. So he has access to background checks that are really good background checks. And he plugged in the name, and the name was totally fake. And so the guy kept contacting me. So I confronted the guy and I said, I don't find anyone with your name. Isn't that like really strange? Are you giving me a fake name? And I almost thought like maybe there's a reason that he's using a fake name. So he said, no, that's my name. You're paranoid. You're silly. And he turned it around on me and started blaming me. And I said, okay, well then why don't you take a picture of your driver's license and send it to me right now? And he didn't do it. And then I never heard from him again. He also did something very strange. He created a fake Facebook account just to talk to me, and he had no friends. And that's like the epitome of a catfish. There was one friend, right. There are no real pictures, and he actually spelled his fake name backwards. And I said, like, what is this? And he said, well, I'm not really on social media. I just did this to talk to you because you wouldn't respond to my texts or whatever. So I said, this guy, I have no idea who this guy is, but like, thank God I did not meet him and I had this friend. So, when in doubt, I think you have to exercise caution. But there were all kinds of clues there. If someone has a social media page with no one on it and you can't find any friends or anything, that's usually a big sign of a catfish.
Yeah.
Right. And the other thing I want to add to that phone number issue, Rachel, is anyone can go online and get a Google Voice.
That's true too.
All you need for a phone number right now is a Gmail account.
Wow.
Yep.
It's getting easier and easier to catfish, but I think thanks to that show, people have more awareness of it and they know that there's scammers out there.
Yeah, well, they're definitely putting more effort into it than what was in the past. I mean, they're actually, before it would almost be like auto responses and be real vague answers, but now they're getting to the point where they're actually answering questions very specifically. And I had one that I had a bad feeling about from the get-go, but I just kind of played it out. And finally, it took about 2 weeks for them to come out, but as soon as I started asking for money,
yeah,
that's a big one.
right, yeah. But I mean, there was just little telltale things along the way that I was like, this doesn't feel quite right. This one, they first said that they were in the town next to me, and then all of a sudden it came and like, oh no, I'm actually in California. I'm I'm like over here doing work for, however long or whatever, and it just got it more and more shady. So I just think you have to be really aware of what's going on, and look at the reality of it. And say, was this really
totally. I think it's easier to catch a catfish now because everybody has FaceTime on their phones. So if you call them on FaceTime and they never answer, never want to Skype with you, that's also a red flag.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I remember watching the show on MTV and being amazed that people talk for 6 months or 2 years and they never FaceTime with the person. It's so like
crazy.
You laugh at it, but it's really sad, and people project in their head and have these whole relationships, and they're just deceived throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, and I want to say, and we talked about
I actually had one. I actually had a client that came to see me. Well, a potential client. We never decided to work together because he considered himself in a relationship, and he had never met the woman. They had never Skyped. They had never communicated any other way than on email. And it was over a 2-year period, and he was out about $80,000.
Oh my gosh, so sad.
It broke my heart. It broke my heart. And he just did not have it in him to accept the fact that she wasn't real. Every time he'd turn around, she needed X amount of dollars to get this visa or that visa or this to get to here. And then, the mother was sick, and there was always something. And I thought my heart was just breaking for him, but he could not bring himself to admit that that was the case. He just said, I'm going to continue doing what I've been doing, and if it doesn't work, I'll be back in touch. And I'm sure the man probably just got not only his bank account broke, but his heart.
Wow. I mean, that almost sounds like really like an addictive dynamic where he was getting something out of it, like he needed to be needed, or he was being, maybe he's just really lonely and he was getting something from the conversation, or just like rescuing someone. It just sounds really sad. Like he was in such a strong denial that he couldn't get out of it.
Yeah.
We talked about this on my blab today a little bit, and we were talking about how a lot of people think only people who are really desperate or not intelligent do this, and that's so not true. And there have been so many stories of brilliant people, really like totally together people who have fallen for these catfishers and scammers. And I was saying today that on NPR a couple of years ago, there was a guy who was a reporter who fell for a robot. The robot learned how to mirror everything that he had said. And what you were saying before, Rachel, about big paragraphs versus the okay or an emoticon, that's part of the mirroring of building rapport with somebody is, you mirror what they say. So these guys or these robots are really good at figuring out how to pull at your heartstrings, especially if you're newly widowed, vulnerable in any possible way. These people just fall for these scammers. It's just terrible. Yeah. So we, just by getting this information out there is just so important, helping people to get clarity.
Absolutely. And, I would encourage people to talk to their friends about what's going on in their dating life, because sometimes it's not good to get your friends too involved because they'll have millions of opinions about your relationship and it can get in the way. But before you're in a relationship, your friend is totally objective. They don't, well, not totally, but they don't know too much about the situation. They haven't formed opinions yet. And if you tell them about some of these things that are going on, they may be more easily able to see the red flags. So, I worry about the people who don't have a support system, because if someone was telling me this, I would say, hello, no, light bulbs are going off. Like, but
Right.
people that don't have the networks, I worry especially about guys actually who don't talk to other men about their love lives the way that women do. They really might not know, and they might be scammed, and they're easy prey for scammers.
You know, as far as the red flags, I think we've covered a lot of that. But I know one of the things that Jeremiah was talking about when we initially wanted to start this blab was, what should your strategy be for selecting the matches online or on the different apps? So what are some of the strategies to use when you're actually analyzing someone's profile? What do you look for? What are the positive things? Let's take the flip side.
Okay, well, I can answer that.
Okay.
Sandy, yeah, sure. I would say that you have to know what you want and what you don't want. And when you're first looking at a profile, you should look for red flags, anything that you don't want. So I find that people who say things like, I want no drama in my life. I have no drugs, or I don't play. There are the people that do, or they attract people that do. So, beware of things like that. If they say anything negative, about their dating, that's kind of a bad sign. If it seems like they're not really ready for a relationship and they're more looking to hook up, there's signs of that, I think. The way that they write about what they're looking for can give you clues as to if they're really serious. You should also look at their photos, of course. If you're looking for someone who does not go out and party all the time, you don't want to choose the person with photos. Every picture has a drink in his hand at a club. So it's just sort of common sense, things like that. First, look for what you don't want. And if the person doesn't violate any of those deal breakers, then I think you have to look at the photo and ask yourself if you're not repulsed by them. And I don't mean to say that you have to be super attractive. I really mean that. I mean, not repulsed. I mean, somewhat thinking like, okay, maybe I could kiss this person. If the answer is yes, and they are within your age range, and, if you're looking for a certain religion or a certain education level, whatever those criteria are, if they meet them, and don't be too picky about that, but, just have your must-haves, a few of them. If they meet your must-haves and they don't violate the deal breakers and you're not repulsed by them, I think you should take it to the phone and see if you could meet them.
Right. I read an article not too long ago, Rachel, where they were suggesting that you come up with your own scoring system based on what your requirements are. So sort of like your list, and each thing on your list gets a certain number of points. And so you predetermine a point system. And if they meet that certain number of points, then give the person a try.
That's interesting. That's a way to look at it. My question would be, though, like, some things maybe were a higher value in your mind than others. So I might have a problem kind of wrapping my head around that.
Well, I think people have trouble finding what is really important. And I think what you're referring to might be like part of Data, a Love Story. She did the TED Talk and she wrote a book about it. She really took the whole thing, the whole online dating process, and made it completely data driven, and there was a scoring system, but she found her husband that way. And and I think what happens, well, it's a fascinating story. You should definitely watch the TED Talk. What happens is that people base their needs on sometimes totally the wrong criteria, and I'm sure you all have seen that. I have a client who was in a relationship with a man who had an apartment, and she made the issues that they had about the apartment instead of what was beneath, the layers underneath, which she said, I only want to date men who have houses. And I said, well, can you explain that to me? Because I'm really not understanding it. So she explained to me that she needed to know that a man was financially responsible. It was really at the bottom of it. And this man not only didn't have a house, but he wanted her to go in on the house that he would buy and give half of her money before they had any kind of commitment. I mean, there were a lot of issues.
Yeah.
It was not about the apartment. So I help her like peel back the layers. And so what I like to say for criteria is it's all about how you want to feel with that person. It's not about the color of their hair. It's not about how many degrees they have. I have a son who never went to college, and he's smarter than most people I know. He's a very self-driven person. A lot of brilliant people never went to school. So those people who, you know, you have to have a PhD and a, you know, master's degree, and because my ex was so stupid, and, you know, it's just, you got to look at the intelligence of a person, not how many degrees they have. But it's about the connection and the way. So if you want to feel safe with a person, emotionally safe, physically safe, who does that person have to be in order for you to feel that way?
And I'll tell you the other thing, Sandy, is that, you know, I see clients every day coming in with their list of what their requirements are, what their must-haves are, what their wants are, what their needs are. And 9 out of 10 times, 9 out of 10 times, they fall for someone who has nothing to do with that list.
No.
And so, you know, it's great to have an idea of what you're looking for, but to also have the ability to be flexible. Because the way I view it is that we are all perfectly imperfect. It's just a matter of finding someone whose imperfections you can tolerate.
Yes, and to be open to love showing up in a surprise package. I think when we try to control the outcome, and I so agree with what you said, Denise, there's so many couples, if you look at happy couples, they often say, this is a person who had everything I wanted, but I had no idea that package would contain it. I have a close friend, she's been married like 35 years, and she would never have picked a man like her husband. But they are so great together. And so it's also, you know, giving things time to gel and to develop a relationship and not expect instant everything. We live in such an instant gratification world, and we expect to know. We're going to have butterflies the minute we walk in, and it's going to be like, you know, the stars are going to shoot out of their head, and that's how you're going to know. And, you know, maybe that worked for you in high school, but it's not really, that's lust and it's chemistry, but it's not the whole picture.
It's not.
It's so
not.
true.
And, you know, you might end up with a great night of sex, but it's not the recipe for a healthy relationship.
Right. And if all you want is a great night of sex, then go for it.
Yeah.
That's right.
So true. One thing I was going to say, where people can actually be more flexible when they're looking at the online dating profiles and on the apps, is the areas of common interest. I don't think it's as important as we think that we share all of these hobbies in common, because, you know, especially if you want to get married and have children, how often are you really going to be, say, going to a museum or an art gallery? I mean, that might be your most important thing, but if it is, then it doesn't matter if they have all the other activities in common as well. You can't expect someone to do everything that you like to do. And frankly, it's healthy for a couple to have different interests and different friends that they can do things with. So the message here is that you don't have to get everything from your partner. You can't expect one person to make you happy and be your sole source of entertainment or intellectual stimulation and romance and everything else. So, you know, realize that. Don't be so judgmental if someone likes different music than you or does not share the same passion for sports, because in the day-to-day marriage and childbearing and rearing, it really doesn't matter.
And even if you're past childbearing, as I am, and I'm dating, you know, the second time around, it's still, you should not expect to have everything from a partner. I think that the ideal relationship, you have a body of friends, you have a full life, and that your partner is part of that picture, but it's not everything. And so,
even being married, I can speak for someone who is married and not in the dating world. You have to understand that you could have the best relationship in the world or the worst. It really doesn't matter. The only one that is responsible for your happiness is yourself.
Right.
So true. Yeah, I actually talked to somebody recently who told me he's been dating a woman for 2 years and he wants to get married and he's not sure if she's the one. So I said, well, if you want to run by what the red flags are that you think they are, I'll be happy to listen. And I met him at a conference. I mean, he wasn't a client. And the first thing he said was once a week, she gets into an emotional funk for like 18 hours and blocks him out. She will not talk to him.
Oh, that's abusive.
It is.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let's stop right here. It was like, and I said, like, in a healthy relationship, each person takes responsibility for their own emotions. You have to be emotionally responsible to be in a healthy relationship. Otherwise, you're holding somebody else hostage. And,
absolutely.
And it was just like, there were other things. She didn't honor the fact that he was an introvert and he needed his space. She took it as an affront if he needed his quiet time. I mean, that's just not okay. So this is not a partnership. I hope I knock some sense into him that he doesn't marry her. But
I hope so.
People often people overlook these important things because the sex is good or the other things are good, but you can't overlook the important stuff.
Yeah, and just because two people enjoy playing tennis does not mean they're going to have a healthy, long-lasting relationship. Going back to the interest, you can have similar interests, but if you don't have the foundations for a relationship, those interests don't matter.
Right.
That's right.
It's true. And people often start with the interests. They do it backwards. It's like we both like skiing. We both like, the same music. So we're soulmates. And they don't look at the most important things, which is character and values, shared worldview. Those are really important.
Yeah. But Jeremiah, I'm going to flip it back to you, dear, because I know you've got still some questions that we haven't answered. Is there any particular thing that you want to cover real quick before we head off?
I mean, we can just kind of bouncing off what we were just talking about. It's talking about people who have lists and describing what it is that they want and how they are. I mean, that all works fine and dandy, assuming that people are actually reflecting who they are accurately. And a lot of times, the way that they describe themselves is not the way that they actually are, or the way that they make themselves look in their photos are not the way that they are in real life. And of course, a lot of that has to do with the fact that when you start communicating, you're already developing an idea of who this person is in your head before you've met them. But then another part of that is also just the person not representing themselves accurately. So even if this person does look on paper like they're exactly what you're looking for, what's to say how accurate that really is? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Rachel, I'm going to let you run.
I agree with that idea that people don't accurately represent themselves. I think that we're not that great at that. This is marketing. We're better at describing our friends sometimes than we are at describing ourselves. And people will say on these online dating profiles what they think you want to hear. And they'll say sort of what everyone else is saying, and they sound kind of generic. So it can be hard to tell, like, who is the real person. And I don't think you're necessarily going to get that from the profile. You might not get that until you're actually there on the date with them. And you might not get that until 3 months into the relationship, actually. So it's kind of the same as meeting someone in a bar or anywhere else. You don't really know who people are until you see them over time and you see how they treat you. And I just wouldn't worry too much about figuring it out right away, but I would just let the relationship naturally unfold, again, as long as there's no red flags. You just have to think of people as almost an onion, and you're kind of peeling the layers, and you're just seeing like the real surface of who they want to present to the world. And it just might not be who they are. So you kind of just have to go with it and discover the mystery beneath.
Yeah.
I just agree, think that and I think...
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeremiah. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was just saying, I just think that people, they automatically just build up this expectation in their head, and they're almost like setting themselves up for failure when they do meet that person. And it's automatically putting this unknown pressure on the other person because they're expecting a certain outcome or a certain, finished result, I guess, because of what they've developed in their head.
It's very true, and it's even more likely for that to happen when someone does have this like public image on social media sites or with their business, because we have these ideas about who they are. So we're taking all of that into the interaction, and we are putting a lot of pressure on it at times. I think it's just best to kind of go from a position of not knowing really, again, and just nothing is guaranteed really. You have to find it out.
You know, when I work with people on helping to create their bios for their online dating profiles, one of the most important things to me is to make sure that they remain authentic. And it's a matter of presenting the best possible version of their authentic self. And I think that sometimes people are given advice, well, you know, I've got to read all these other profiles, I've got to sound like this person or that person. And that's not necessarily going to be you. That's not going to be a reflection of you. So when you are writing your profiles and when you are putting yourself out there, try to remain authentic. Go with what's in your heart. And you've also got to consider what Rachel and I talked about before, is that your branding. How do you want to be perceived? And is that branding authentic to who you are in your heart? So I think it's really a combination of combining both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think also another big issue in online dating profiles is that people list adjectives and don't really say anything about themselves. So if you say, I'm athletic, I'm creative, I like to travel, and you don't say anything specific, then you sound generic. And people think they're saying so much. Also, people will describe their looks in an online profile, which I never understood. I mean, you have photos. I have pretty blue eyes and brown hair. Okay, I can see. Thank you. So it's you know, people really have no idea what they're doing, and they don't see how other people perceive them. And so when they work with professionals like us, and we can help them design a profile that will be authentic, that will tell little stories about who they are, so that there is something to go on.
And
when
that's
you talk
so
to the
key,
person,
Sandy, for starting the conversation, because if you have a generic, boring profile, your interaction is going to start out being very boring small talk. And, you know, with all of the competition that's actually on these dating apps and online dating sites, if you're boring, the person's just going to click on to the next person. And, you know, they don't want to necessarily answer the same cliche questions or even tell you what they did this weekend. You really have to find a way to stand out. And the best way to do that is by creating a profile that's unique, so that you're giving the person something to go on. If you put open-ended kind of questions or even a cute heading, then the person has something to comment on when they contact you, instead of just a standard email. Oh, I like your profile. What do you do for work? You know, no one wants to have, this is why I think we hate online dating and mobile dating apps, why a lot of people do, because it feels so inauthentic, and like going through the motions and having this small talk and starting and getting to know someone. And it's exhausting. You have the same conversation over and over with dozens of people. And then, you know, you may encounter a few crazies there, here and there, who are negative and bitter. And then you have that kind of piled in. So, you know, if you create a conversation that's unique, that's unlike what they've heard before, you really have an advantage there. It's even more so than how your pictures look, or, you know, you're giving them an experience of what it feels like the first time interacting with you. And if they're having fun and you're making them laugh and smile, they're going to want to get to know you as opposed to everyone else. You have to keep it fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and if I can
stand out.
If I can touch on one other thing, Rachel, you mentioned photos. One of the things that I think is a very huge problem with online dating is the fact that people don't consider what photos they're using. And you see photos with them with friends, you see photos with them with sunglasses on, you see photos with them doing activities, and it just, to me, it's like
no clothes on.
You know, it's like, take the time. If you're going to invest your time in doing something like an online dating site or an app, take the time to get some professional photos done. Pick out 3, 4, 5 where you look your best, where you're not over exaggerating who you are. You're not using photos that are 10 years old. You don't have sunglasses on covering your eyes, and you're not standing there with 5 or 6 of your buddies.
Yes. And if you're a female, I always say this and I'll say it again. You cannot have a
gotta
photo.
be the prettiest one in the photo.
That's right. Because you do not want the guy to look at the photo and say, oh, I hope it's her. And then it's not.
And it's not.
And you know, if you're a guy and you're on a boat and you're so far away and I have to guess which one is you, I'm just not going to be interested. So, you know, people are looking for reasons to say either yes or no, and make their job easy. Make them say yes by having good photos and no kind of incriminating information in your profile.
Yeah, we've got a comment down here with their excellent picture.
Yeah.
You know,
that's a red flag.
That should be
some people cut the X out, so you see like the wedding picture. It's like them in a tuxedo, and then you can see the wedding
photo, please.
When I first started dating online, there was a guy who took his license photo. He scanned his license. You could see the state stamped on his head, and that was his only photo. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, I think it was before cell phones had, you know, good cameras, but like, there's no excuse today, really. Like, you don't have to spend a fortune to have great photos, and they shouldn't look like your business photos. Like, everything should be all tightened up. You know, really separate out. And this is something that really is like a pet peeve of mine, is that people tend to date like they work. You know, they bring that same persona. You know, it's an interview, and the women come all buttoned up, and they're trying to impress like a colleague, and he doesn't know if he should hire her or date her. And so she might be really impressive, and he might even make out with her, but he wants to connect with a woman like a man to a woman. And that means that I don't care how accomplished you are, you don't have to dump it out the window, but don't lead with your accomplishments. You know, come in and lead with your passions, lead with your dreams, you know, connect with each other on an emotional level. And this is just, you know, such an important part of dating.
Yep. And I love that you said that, Sandy, lead with your passions, because that should be your conversation. That should be where you connect. When you're talking about something that you feel passionately about, and, you know, for a woman, if you're doing this and a guy sees your passion, that's what he's going to be attracted to. And vice versa. You know, when a guy is talking about something that he's passionate about, you know, Jeremiah is passionate about giving back to his community. And when he talks about working in the nursing homes on his Sunday afternoons and the things that he does with the music and everything else, you can see that passion in him, and it just overcomes his authentic being. And that's what's going to attract the right woman for him. You know, so it's about your passions. It's not about your job. It's not about your statistics. It's not about your money. It's not about your age. Lead with your passions and stick with your passions, because those are the things that people are going to find attractive.
This is inspiring. Yeah. I'm inspired. We should have a hashtag, lead with your passion.
Lead with your passion.
Jeremiah is so quiet. I hope we're not overpowering you, Jeremiah. There's too much estrogen here.
There's a lot of estrogen.
Taking it all in.
Yes.
That's okay. You have a necklace night up, so you're ready.
Well,
I gotta go, guys, because I wasn't even
Sandy,
supposed to
thank
be
you
here.
so much for
joining
coming
us.
in. We
Great to see
appreciate
you.
it. Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Sandy.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Jeremiah, is there anything else that you want to cover while we still have Rachel? I know we're going a little bit over, but I don't think anyone really cares to mind.
Let me look. You know me. I'm analytical. I have like a whole checklist of things I wanted to discuss. I covered quite a bit of it.
Good.
Yeah. Unless anybody has any question from the audience, that's actually.
Jensen, you want to jump in for a minute and say hello?
Jump in, Jensen.
I know he's been out there. Oh, well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you to everyone.
Absolutely.
We're getting some good comments here.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Let me let him in real quick to say hello. Although I know his connection's not bad over there.
It's not bad?
or it's not good over there. Sometimes he's not able to call in.
Where is he calling from?
His condo actually has the Wi-Fi, so it's everyone in his whole condo.
Okay.
So sometimes it doesn't work. There you are, dear.
Oops. Hi, we lost him.
Jensen is a relationship and intimacy coach,
awesome.
Rachel, and he's here locally in Destin. So he's done a few blocks with us and does a lot of work with us on our events and stuff like that. But unfortunately, I don't see we're getting him on. So I just want to thank everybody for coming and joining us tonight. A couple of things, if you are joining us from my website live, there is some information on how to contact Rachel. There's information on how to subscribe to her email list. There is also information on how to purchase one of her books. So feel free to jump in if you want more communication with Rachel, more information, or anything that she has to offer as far as matchmaking and coaching is concerned. Also on the website, we are offering consultations, free 15-minute phone consultations for both Rachel and myself. And there's a couple other goodies that are there just as a thank you. So again, Rachel, always a pleasure to have you on. We know you'll be back again.
Thank you. I would love to. This was really fun. And happy
Absolutely.
to, like you said, Denise, free 15-minute consultation with anyone who's interested and needs any help with their dating or relationships.
Yeah. And Jeremiah, of course, great topic. Thank you for coming up with such wonderful questions. And we actually have Jasbina joining us next week on the 13th, I believe. And she's going to be giving us 3 tips on how to connect with a man. So that's going to be another interesting one for everyone to join in on.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And I hope you all have a good evening. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Jeremiah, too. Thanks, Denise.
Okay. Good night, Rachel.